We're going in 3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone, and thanks for joining today's podcast. We are on episode 2 of The Rookie and the Vet. I am Drake, your host, here with my co-host, Don Hensley. What's going on, Don? How are you?
Good. How are you? It's March Madness, maybe.
I know, I can't complain. Okay, I was really, really good before the Sweet 16 on DraftKings. Now I am total dog shit, even though I could have just picked all the favorites and we would have been completely fine.
Well, I
How
mean,
are you looking?
the chalk is the way to go this year, right? I mean, not just in money line, but also in spread. I mean, it's been, there haven't been the upsets that you would have predicted in college basketball. I mean, this has been one of the lamest March Madness tournaments, I think, of all time.
Yeah, and we'll get into that later in the episode. This week's format will be a little bit different. We had our intro kind of pilot episode last week, and I want to get into kind of our more regular standard programming, as you could say. We'll have a couple segments here we want to talk about. College basketball being one of them, NBA, get into some NCAA football stuff, and yeah, it's just going to be more topical for the week of sports, what we've been doing. And yeah, so what's something this week in sports, though, that's kind of caught your eye? I know we've talked a little bit in the Cat Salad Crew group chat. I think a good topic just to kind of start the flow of this was Mike Mossberger tried to ask last night at about 10:30. So what's the deal with this bat? We got a situation in our hand with this bat thing in the MLB. What's kind of your take on this, like Yankees, like bat evolution deal?
Okay, first of all, nobody even talks about it if they don't hit 150 home runs in the first game, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they hit 8. They're 2 away from the record, so nobody even cares if they come out and they get beat 3-1. It's not even a topic of conversation. The only reason it's a topic of conversation is because of what they did. It's something that if it's approved by baseball, everybody could do it. You still got to hit the damn ball.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we always look at this technology, and I know that today, people were talking about a bunch of scientists and analysts, at MIT came up with the bat. Well, scientists and analysts have been running sports for the last 20 years. I mean, so to me, it doesn't matter to me. You could put the big end at the handle for all I care. If it meets the requirements by Major League Baseball and you can swing it and you can drive the ball out of the park, then do it.
Yeah, I actually kind of love the idea of like a team innovating like that. And it just sucks also because it's the Yankees. They're one of the highest paid teams in baseball, and they're one of the most loved and hated teams in baseball. So whatever they do is going to be kind of controversial, especially with the lineup they kind of threw out there. Like I know Yankees fans were basically kind of pissed at the lineup they threw out there, and then they scored like 20 runs, and they're like, okay, maybe that's just an absolute goat lineup. But I think it's smart if you're not lacing them up the middle or fucking putting the barrel on the ball. Why would you have the barrel right there, especially if you can't get your hands around? These pitchers nowadays are insane. Like I was watching this clip of Chipper Jones earlier in the week. I don't know if you've seen any of this stuff. He was on like a podcast recently, and he has his own podcast, and he was talking about how today there's no way he'd be able to hit like he did back then. He said back then you'd have one, maybe 2 guys in the entire pitching staff that threw 100. Now they have 4 or 5 guys, 2 starters, a couple in the pen, the closer. It's a lot different game now. So like to just have the hitters be able to keep up and not make the game as boring and make more contact and kind of they have to change something up. At least it's scientifically it makes sense to me where it's like, oh yeah, this is kind of cool.
Okay, you played baseball. How many times did you ever look at your bat, and all the ball marks were on it? They were never towards the end. They were always where they've got the Yankees now have developed the bat where the ball hits 85, 90% of the time. So
Mm-hmm.
it just makes sense. You know, I, I don't think I'd want to hit it off the end of that thing because it looks like it's going to shatter in your hands. The end's not very big, but I just think that it's sports, man. And if you're not revolutionizing, you're not very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the evil empire is what it is. I mean, everybody hates the Yankees for a reason. The Dodgers are going to make a close run at them for being the most hated team
Oh,
in
I hate them more.
baseball. And I think, yeah, generally I kind of hate them more too, just because,
The way
you
they're
know,
doing the contracts and shit is just like, wow, you guys are actually annoying.
yeah. And I'm not sure, like, if I'm a 30-year-old athlete, I'm all, and someone wants to pay me. First of all, someone wants to pay me $150 million. I don't give a shit when they pay it to me, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of wild how, I'll pay you $3 million this year, and I'll tell you what, when you're 47 years old, I'm going to give you, $55 million.
Right.
And The whole league has become the Bobby Bonilla of sports contracts.
Honestly though, it's good for the baseball players. I'm happy for the players, but not every organization is going to be able to move them down the line like that. I mean, Cleveland did it, I think, with a pitcher. I can't remember which pitcher we just signed, but um,
Baseball's awful though. I mean, the contract structure, the lack of a salary cap, it's terrible for the fan. I don't think that as a fan of the Tigers, and I know you're a fan of the Indians, and there's a lot of Indian fans that we know. Those two teams, I mean, they the only way they can compete really is to develop talent. And I was watching my Tigers had the luxury of opening in Los Angeles for the ring celebrations and everything, which sucked to watch. But and they made a good point is out there, a lot of people were taking pay cuts just to be a part of that because there's so much great talent on the team. And, a player like Michael Conforto, who's playing for the Dodgers for almost nothing, the Tigers Indians would have paid big money to have, but they don't care. Those fringe players don't care because they just know they're going to get a chance to play for a World Series contender.
Right, and that kind of leads us into our first kind of segment here, and I kind of wanted to start off baseball just because it's topical. Have you watched a lot this first
Yeah.
opening
Yeah.
week?
I got the MLB TV package.
What do you think? What do you think about the blackout? Like the first day on that shit, like for
Well,
the MLB, like already pissed off fans because their marketing is terrible. Like, what does that do for you as at least a viewer? Does it like make you kind of pissed that you're paying for something that they're half-assing?
so for me, it was only blacked out for like 45 minutes. I get that it was 45 minutes, but um, it came back on. They offered me something like for $10 I can pick something out of the MLB store. I saw that for some markets they're giving tickets to games and stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
you know I don't care what technology it is. When it launches, there's always some problem.
Right.
We're all big DraftKings and FanDuel guys. How many times has that gone down like 20 minutes before kickoff on a Saturday afternoon?
Oh, I know. Like, especially like DraftKings regular, just like DFS. I've had so many times where like FanDuel
Oh,
wasn't letting me put lineups in, or it was like screwing me over, and I'm like, oh my god. And then sometimes these like people will hit bets too, and they have that wrong information, and they just won't pay out. I don't even know how that's legal. Like, how can they tell like, oh yeah, you had 6.5, but like we're not counting that as an assist. Like, where
you
does that
didn't.
even exist?
Well, that shit didn't happen back in the day when Rocky Bambino was running the local
Yeah, they come
bookmaking.
break your legs,
Yeah,
or like you're gonna get fucking hung up.
there was no like hey, sorry, there was a technical glitch. Bullshit, there was a technical glitch.
So our thing here too, we want to talk a little bit about the ABS. And we're kind of on separate sides here, and I just want to have your take here. We have it down as you think it is not a good thing for baseball, and I just want to kind of hear why and give me your take on how you think it'll change the game or make the game different than what it is.
All right. So first of all, I'm a big fan of instant replay. I have no problems with instant replay. And just like in every other sport, there's instant replay, but not everything is instant replay. There's certain things, and you can't have challenge a holding call in the NFL. You can't challenge a traveling call in the NBA. You can't challenge tripping or holding in the NHL. But now in baseball, they want to be able to make it so you can challenge every single play in the game, which is freaking ridiculous. First of all, baseball is an emotional game. And part of that emotion is the relationship between umpire and player. And I watched a lot of the spring games when they were using the ABS, and it looked like the little smart ass second grader that knows all the answers tapping themselves on the head the whole time. It was embarrassing. It looks stupid, first of all, and you know, I'm sorry, but that part of baseball is that, and I've umpired, is that little bit on the edge. If a pitcher can consistently hit that outside edge, maybe just off the plate, you're going to give it to them for the fact that they can hit that just off the plate. But either go to full robotic umpiring and don't have the people interaction at all, or don't allow the ABS, because to me the halfway system is kind of a farce for the game. It slows things down, and it is fairly quick still, but it still slows things down. And you got three players that can challenge. You got the pitcher who can challenge, the catcher, the batter. It just to me it disrupts the rhythm for no reason. If you want to be 100% make sure that every call is accurate, go full robotic umpiring. But this halfway approach to me is just no good.
I think you made a great point that I didn't consider was like that relationship between the umpire and the players and the coaches and the catcher and just kind of the banter that goes along in the game too that could have an effect on the game. And like you said, it's an emotional game because of everybody who is involved, either taking them out or making it all robotic. I can understand like where you're coming from, but I think at least the stuff that I looked up, there's only about 4 challenges a game. Do you know if there was any? Do you know if there was anything like players were limited, like how many times a team could challenge? Was it?
Yeah, yeah. So you get, I think, if I remember correctly, you get 2 or 3 challenges a game,
Mhm.
but every time you're right doesn't count.
Okay, so that's what it kind of looks like then. So I think you get 2 a game each side, and if you're right, they are not counting.
Right.
Which is an interesting thing. You said it slowed the game down. You're right. It only slowed the game down about 13 seconds per game, the entire game. Is what this stat says. It also says that the batters in the MLB were 52% correct on the calls that they did challenge. So like if they averaged 4, does that mean that they challenged 8 times a game? You know what I mean? If they were
Probably.
52% correct. So, I mean, if they're 52% right, is that better or worse for the game to at least have like in those momentum moments, at least at the end of the game where you know it's a high pressure situation for not only the pitcher, the catcher, and the batter, but the umpire's got to not fuck up in those situations essentially too. I think that at least what it says, the challenges aren't going to be a huge difference in the game outside of like I think a new number would be a cool number stat to take care of would be like players who are correct, like how many times they challenged, like what their challenge percentage was. Um, and another challenge stat too here was that here where's that? Sorry.
Well, the catchers for one had the best
Yep, I did see that
challenge,
too. Yep, they
and
had
the
they at like
pitchers had the worst.
57. I think that the catchers were at 57% correct on
Yeah.
any challenges they made, and the pitchers were the worst at like 44% or something along those lines.
Right.
But it shows you
But
how
see,
good the umpires really are, though. If they're
right.
that close to the like they're that on the line.
So here's my question though: is that to me in sports, there's probably every sport has its dramatic moments. To me, one of the most dramatic moments in a baseball game is bases loaded, 2 outs.
Mm-hmm.
Bases loaded, 2 outs, full count makes it even more dramatic.
Right.
So bases loaded, full count, game 7 of the World Series, pitch on the edge, umpire bangs him out, game over. But wait, so now I'm tapping my head. Even if it's 2 feet outside, I'm tapping my head because what the hell? Why not?
Mm-hmm.
And then comes up on the screen, and we gotta wait. And oh wait, it's overturned. I mean, to me, I just don't. The ball strike call in baseball to me is like traveling called
Yeah.
in basketball or holding in football. It's judgment. It's judgment.
I
And
think though if you're limited though, like you got to be really cautious about like who's going to be having those challenges in their hand too as a coach or a manager. You're probably going to limit to like okay, your eye kind of sucks, so you're not fucking calling anything. And there's going to be guys where it's like okay, in big time situations you call this. I also saw though that a lot of the times players were more correct on an opening pitch than on like a high stress pitch like a 3-2 full count or like a 2-2 count with 2 strikes on them. They were wrong more so. Like I think it was like 46%. They were right 46% of the time on those, and like 53% right on like first pitch. So if they challenge early in the count, they're more successful. Later in the count, they're less successful because I think they're a little more biased at the end of that. They think that the zone's getting shrunk a little bit. So I think that's an interesting thing to see too. Is just like
but like
it's gonna depend on what the count is in situation too.
I think league wide though, the umpire ball strike percentage was like 95 something, 95% or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I get
95%.
that. That's really good. 5% outlier is really good.
Yeah, because I'm gonna, again, keep going back to other sports, but how many times is holding missed in the NFL? I mean, or traveling in the NBA, but those aren't reviewable mostly because it's a rhythm thing. If you
Right.
call it, if you reviewed every traveling in the NBA, no one would watch the damn game.
Yeah, but again, it is limited though. You are limited to the amount that you can challenge. I think that is important to what your point that you're trying to make here is they're okay, and it's 13 seconds. It's 13.8 seconds per challenge. So you can do the math on that. If it's 8 challenges,
So
that
if you
does start
get,
to add up a little bit.
but like if you get 4 pitches that are just off the edge that actually are overturned, now we're looking at 8 challenges.
Mm-hmm.
You
And it
know,
looks like it's a 3 minute increase basically in those spring games. It was a 3 minute increase per game on an average of 2 hours and 35 minutes, basically to 2 hours and 38 minutes.
yeah, I'm not a big time of game person, to be honest with you, for the simple fact that if I'm spending that kind of money for a ticket, I hope the game goes 4 hours.
Right.
I hope they don't, I hope they keep selling beer until 3 hours into the game.
Yeah, it's more so like a viewership problem from at home. Like honestly, it's hard for me to watch not my own team play, especially if I'm just watching like Dodgers every Sunday night at 7. Dodgers or Yankees or Dodgers or Red Sox or just like it's hard for me to get into the game, especially when those teams have no appeal for me. Like
That's the same thing for me. Like in any sport that's not my team, with the exception of football, I can watch pretty much football with regardless of who's playing. But I would never sit down and really watch a college basketball or a pro basketball game unless there was a team that I really cared about. Same thing with hockey. So to me, that the time of game and all that, I get it. It's there's dollars that and signs that go with all that, but um I don't know. I feel like that relationship between the umpire and the pitcher and the catcher and the manager is such a key part of baseball that I would hate to see it you know bastardized in any way that creates an environment that is different than what you get today. And being an umpire, um the fact that the one last thing too is being an umpire, catchers that could frame the ball always had an advantage. This takes that advantage away.
mm-hmm.
Now you can just, if you're just a schlep back there catching the ball, it doesn't really matter
But
because
but you could also, again, if you're really good at fucking framing or whatever, how many times can they be like, okay, they challenged this, but it was a strike, or like they challenge, like you basically you're so good they can't tell, like basically they're not going to be able to tell as the
well,
pitcher. You know
the
what I mean?
batter who's going to challenge it, he doesn't see the
Oh,
frame.
that's true. That's true. You're right. I'm sorry.
Um, so I one thing that probably one of the best things I heard was Max Scherzer say that he'd be okay with it if there was a little bit of a buffer. So maybe the exact strike zone has just a little bit of a buffer, say a half inch
Right.
all the way around there, that if it's inside there, it's still whatever was called.
Right, like it just expanded like a half a ball or something,
Right.
like a
Right.
half a ball length on each side of the plate, or like on both sides too, or however it might be. I think
Right.
that's a, and again, time and that goes back to for the it's more so all these sports are being catered more towards the viewer because a lot of people aren't going to games like they once were anyway. So
Right.
that's a big reason why they're trying to make it more watchable on a stream or trying to speed the game up. That's the same, but like I don't know why they don't have that same thought process as college football. They just keep adding commercials and there's more wait time and the games are longer. So it's like if you're adding length to at least challenges and part of the game, I will take that over like having to watch another fucking State Farm commercial for the 40th time or like whatever the case may be.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Yeah, I'm so tired of seeing Peyton Manning in commercials. I could scream. So anything that gets the commercials off of there would be great for me. But yeah, I just think that there's a way to use technology without, I think, taking away from the human element.
I just thought it was kind of cool too. Like in a big time situation, I just saw Jazz Chisholm do it a couple times, and like I like his style of play. He kind of plays a little bit of cockiness. He's like kind of that new generation of player, and like you said, the shit that pisses you off, where he's like, "Yep." He almost like a couple times knew for a fact there were going to be balls, and he was getting sit to first base. That type of momentum too, like you said, it can cause a negative emotion for the next at bat. So how many times is that umpire going to give him a ball to challenge, and he's going to have to challenge it and get it right, and it's going to mess with his head. Now he's playing against the pitcher and the umpire. There's it's the evolution of the game, and I'm interested to see if they do at it how it does change. But let's move on to our next topic, and I have it on here since it is topical. We want to jump in on some March Madness, and I want to kind of just touch on the lack of the Cinderella stories that have happened in this past year. College basketball is obviously the most entertaining during March, and I don't think we saw the teams like Florida Gulf Coast or a Loyola Marymount or any of those type of teams kind of make a run this year. And I did a little bit of a deep dive into this tournament in comparison to the tournaments in years past. and I wanted to look up the upset rate between this year and last year and like the years before. So I looked up how many teams this year got upset that were a five seed difference. So if you were 1 versus 6 or 12 versus 5, like that's the type of upset we're kind of talking about here. This year there was, okay, I'll give you actually the last 3 years. There were nine upsets in 2024, 12 upsets in 2023, and 9 upsets in 2022. Before that, there were no upsets less than 9 since 2015. This year there were 4. So there's a huge disparity this year, in the rate that these lower teams are winning at. And I think a big thing that has to do with that is the NIL and the transfer portal. In 2024 there were 2,000 players that entered. The year before that there were 1,500. But the introduction of the new eligibility rules and the new NIL opportunities at these schools, like Texas Tech or Texas A&M, some of these big time schools with that money to pay some of these smaller programs to take those teams that were kind of, built with a superstar player at a Division II or a 1AA type school. They're going to go and pick up those kids and come to a big time program. So the likelihood of those kids who had a Cinderella story maybe last year in 2023 or 2024, that's not as likely going to happen. I think it also has a little bit to do with the dominance of this class and some of the players on these teams. You have Cooper Flagg, who's probably one of the best prospects since maybe Anthony Davis, if I had to guess. In my head, maybe Zion, but they didn't have kind of that the same vibe. Cooper's just a winner. And that brings me back to my last point here. I wanted to say the last time there was this few upsets was in 2007, and that was the year that Ohio State played Florida in the national title game.
Interesting.
And I think a lot of that has to, you can contribute to a lot of that of being like, okay, superstar player. You got Greg Oden, you got Joakim Noah, you got Mike Conley, you got Corey Brewer. You have a lot of those superstar players and top-heavy teams that are getting through, and they're not getting upset because they are so dominant. So I think some of it has to do with obviously the NIL and the change-up of teams, but I think a lot of it is also there's a lot of talented kids on a lot of these teams because of those NIL deals and those monies these big programs can provide that these smaller programs cannot. And I think that kind of shows even with like Michigan. They put the time and effort in to get a big coach. They spent the money they needed to spend. They even got somebody from Ohio State who goes over, honestly has a great tournament, plays a great Big Ten tournament. And college basketball is not going to be what it used to be. I think once you do have those Cinderella type stories, or you have those teams that are really good the year before, any of those dudes that come back, they're probably going to get poached by these big time programs. I don't think the game has been affected too much by it. I think it's still been very entertaining. There were sort of some upsets, but like you can tell, it's very top heavy. Those coaches who are experienced, some of the best coaches of all time, those are the guys who are going to succeed in the tournament now because one, they have the resources, and two, they have the experience to be able to coach a team that maybe doesn't have that glue, and they can bond those kids together much quicker than they have in the past.
I hate everything related to NIL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get it that the kids deserve to be paid, and I'm 100%. But what it's done to the game for college football and college basketball, I think, is a detriment. And I think it's interesting when you talked about the upsets this year. I think most of those were 12-5s.
Yeah, yep, and that's how it usually goes too. And
Right.
nothing was, and I don't think anybody like under that. I don't think a 4 seed was upset at all. I think maybe
No.
1 or 2 5-12s were beat, and then other than that, I don't think you saw the upsets. There was only 4 of them, so like it was
Right.
pretty chalk the entire time. Like every favorite pretty much won outside of Arkansas won. Michigan upset somebody too. I can't think of who they beat. But like those were 2 of the bigger upsets, and those weren't like huge. There's like plus 150, plus 180 like upsets.
I don't know if when we get done with this, if you can show this graphic when we're doing this, but one of the things the graphic that just shocks me is the one that we had circulated earlier in the week where it showed where all the players started from that were in the Sweet 16. And you had to guess which team was which team. And it was almost impossible to guess because with the exception of, I think, like Purdue, which had all 5 guys actually start at Purdue.
Yeah.
It was about impossible to understand and figure out which team was which to me, what you're going to find now is the days of the Loyola Marimounts making a run when you had, Gathers and those guys on the team, and they'd been there for all of them for 3 or 4 years. the Valparaisos and Princetons and stuff that used to just be what the March Madness was all about. I don't think you're going to see that anymore, just for the simple fact that a team like Tulsa, use
Yeah.
them as an example, just throwing out a team.
Wichita
Um,
State.
yeah, those teams are going to have if they have a run one year, those players are going to get poached the next.
Hmm.
And so keeping a small school starting five together for a couple seasons is a thing of the past. We'll never see it again.
So I have a question, just because you said it a little bit earlier in your rant. Like, why do you think NIL is like ruining? Like, what's a couple points where you just like, this is why it's not the same? How is it so much different? Because like players were being paid in the past.
I,
Like SMU got canceled in the '80s or late '70s for paying their players. Like, this isn't a thing. You just didn't get caught. Like, what's the biggest noticeable difference that you think is souring the game?
I don't think it maybe as much in football because the golf was already there, but I think the golf and basketball has gotten much bigger the last couple seasons between the haves and the have-nots. And I think that when you see, use the MAC for example, when you see players in the MAC that have a really good year and then the next year they're gone, they're gone because they've been offered more money than what they were getting before. And you didn't used to see that coming out of the low um, D1 schools, the smaller D1 schools, this mass exodus to the larger D1 schools. So I think that what NIL's done is, and I'm not saying I hate it for the players because if I was a player, I'd want the money too. And at some point in this podcast, we'll talk about Tavian St. Clair, who's been in this situation. But so I'm not actually opposed to it from a player's perspective. But the problem I have is the gulf in college sports between the haves and the have-nots continues to widen, and I think the days of seeing a mid-major compete at any for anything at any level, be it March Madness, which is probably the biggest crime to me. I don't think a mid-major is ever going to compete for a college football playoff spot. But I think what you're seeing in college basketball is that gulf is getting bigger between the haves and the have-nots. And I think you'll see the seeds that are like from 10 to 16, that will be a continuous churn. There won't be a Valparaiso who always appears in there and they're always scared of them, or a Princeton. I think you're going to see a bigger churn there because those teams are the ones that are getting disrupted the most.
Hmm. And I mean, I agree too. And the unfortunate part is those programs made a lot of money by getting in those tournaments and succeeding,
Right.
and that the only good thing that comes from that is those players that built those programs and gave and developed those schools and they earned all that cash. At least the players can get a little benefit even the following year from getting those big signings to playing, because like a lot of these dudes, they're not going to play at the next level. The March Madness is the biggest time they'll ever play in any type of it is their professional sport, So I celebrate it strictly because as a player, like you said, you don't blame them, but I think there's some things that we can do to regulate it to make it at least a little bit more manageable for fans, because at the end of the day, it's sports, it's about the fans. If you're going to make it to where you can't even root for your guys on a year-to-year basis and you're a different team, it's like contractually it doesn't make sense for somebody to be able to go to one place to the next to the next to the next. It's not manageable long term. So I think there will be some changes that at least make it a little more appealing to the fans because it has to. But like I said, I think right now we take these lumps. We're it's still a learning process through the NIL. At least these people, like it's name, image, and likeness. At least they're making money off their own name, their own performances. It's not like these smaller schools or these bigger schools are really any different. It's just like you said, the money they're forking out. I just
You
don't.
might start, you
Go ahead.
might start to see players at the big time program stay longer.
Yeah, and I think that is and I think that's a positive.
Right.
If you had a Cooper Flag that's getting paid, he's going to go because he's insane. But like if you have players who maybe are a couple layers, below him, even like that kid from Purdue who's really good, he's an older player. Like having those players stick around and like or Zach Edey, for example, like last year, like having somebody like that around the program and around the NCAA, that's only going to help ratings and have people be a fan of basketball, because like having the Tyler Hansborough type people who you can root against every year for 4 years, or like Grayson Allen or people like that, I think if those players are even better than like the players I just named, if they're more a higher caliber player, I think it's good for the sport. And I think football in particular, I think they can get those quarterbacks to stay longer because we see the development of the quarterback at the college game. The more years they play, the more snaps they play, usually the more successful they can be.
Well, that kid in Utah is in his 8th year at quarterback, isn't he?
Yeah. What is it? Yeah, I can't remember his name off
I
the
can't
top of
remember
my
his
head.
name
The dude with
either.
long hair. The dude with long hair.
Yeah, I mean, some of these COVID guys are like 27 turning pro.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like I think the COVID stuff is about ran out. So it's like, is it something right like Tanner Rising or something? Cam Rising. Cam Rising.
Cam Rising,
Yeah,
yeah.
Cam Rising.
Yeah, he's like in his 8th year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's insanity. But just to play off the NIL stuff, it's also shifted the mindset for coaches. You know, we have Bill Belichick at this level, who, in my opinion, if the NIL didn't exist, I don't think he's coaching at the NCAA level. You have your Deions, you have your Ed Reeds coaching at the historical black colleges. Talk a little bit about the evolution of at least the coach in college football. You know, the player, the former player. That's there. 83% of the coaches in the NCAA are former players. Talk about the impact that's kind of making on the game and how Deion is kind of changing what it means to be or what is important as a head coach at this level.
Well, and we've got some friends who hate Deion Sanders, so I'll start with a little shout out to Andy Burton. But Deion Sanders has changed college football, and we ain't going back. Because first of all, look at the resume. He comes from an HBCU program that has been terrible. He wins, goes to Colorado, a program that has been an absolute doormat for 10 seasons. Not like it just happened overnight. For a decade, the Buffaloes have been terrible. Goes there, and in 2 years, they're in the top 20, and in a bowl game. Now, how he does it is what irritates everybody, and that is he rolls up in there bigger than life, starts, letting his, TV crews come in and videotape everything, lets his kids put their social media handles on the back of their jerseys, tells people they ain't going to do, his players aren't going to do nothing unless you pay them. And all of a sudden, guess what? Everybody wants to go play for him, especially defensive backs. Now, that's just the business side of it. Then you look at the fact that this guy's a former player, arguably outside of Bo Jackson, maybe one of the greatest athletes of a generation, played in the World Series, played in 2 Super Bowls.
How good was he as a baseball player?
He was good. I mean, he led the league in triples 1 year.
Did he play every game? Like, how was his, because I've never really, dug deep in him. I have a couple of his rookie cards and shit, but, I don't really know how he was as a player. He's like a Billy Hamilton, but better.
Yeah, I can remember him taking, a helicopter and stuff between games when football and baseball was going on at the same time because, he played for the Braves that few years, and they were in the postseason.
World Series and shit, yeah.
Which was right in the middle of football, so, but I'd say he was more like I can remember he probably hit 280, 290.
Oh, that's pretty good.
30, 40 bags. Yeah, I mean, he was legit, and wasn't a great outfielder, but was a strong player. So he wasn't some chump that was just stopping by to make some kind of news or something. He was legit.
So what was the coverage like him during that time? If he's one of these athletes that like Bo Jackson and him, they're the only 2 players that really had success doing this. And he was kind of a cocky player, and it was during a time where I think media was a little harsher on the players too because they had a louder voice than they do now. The players didn't have as much control. Did the media was he like a media darling? Did they enjoy his kind of a circus?
He was a circus. Yeah. I mean, he started the whole, flapping the arm when he was returning the punts for a touchdown, showing the defensive players the ball after he picked it off. But he could do. I mean, I can remember one game where he picked off a interception for a touchdown, returned a punt it was an unbelievable kick returner, and then also caught a 55-yard pass. I mean, he played on both sides of the ball. He was Travis Hunter before Travis Hunter. And he also threw in the baseball part of it. So I can remember he was on Sports Illustrated without his shirt off, and everybody, made a big deal about that back in the day. But he was always
it was a big deal because he didn't have his shirt on. It was cocky or something.
Yeah,
he was just being loud.
Well, yeah, he was just being Deion. But the wild thing about Sanders too, though, is he's never drank, doesn't smoke. big religious guy, which people probably don't get any of that from the persona, but yeah, I just think he's also changed the direction of college football coaches. I mean, look at Bowling Green, Eddie George, what an unbelievable hire for the Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
He goes to Tennessee State, turns that program around in the HBCUs, shows up at Bowling Green. He's got pretty much the same cred that Deion, Hall of Fame running back, uh, just a tough-nosed, hard-nosed guy, Heisman Trophy winner. Um, who wouldn't want to go play for him at Bowling Green?
Mm-hmm. And especially him being from Ohio, I think that's a great fit, especially
Great.
for his first hire, like at a I would say a bigger program, a MAC school. I mean, I think it's a good start for him and a place where he can kind of get his footing underneath him, and it's almost like a Cincinnati. It's like a Cincinnati-esque type place for him to start, kind of like what's his name? I can't think of the dude for Wisconsin, former
Oh,
Buckeye.
yeah, Fickle.
Yeah, Luke Fickle. It's
Yeah,
kind of like a similar like starting point for him, and that's the thing too. Like Eddie George was also on Broadway. He was also, he owns businesses. He's a big
got
business guy in
restaurants
Columbus.
named
Right,
after.
right. Just doing a bunch of different stuff, and it's like I think these guys miss the game and like the competitive aspect of it and the camaraderie of being with the boys and the developing like a team with a great chemistry, and that's something that Deion is going to be one of the first coaches to, use the portal as his recruiting stuff because like he's never going to have a huge recruiting class. He's going to get a couple big signees every year, but he's going to go after those guys that feel wronged by these Alabamas, these SEC and Big Ten schools. He's going to go after those dudes who maybe were promised some snaps or they thought they'd get more playing time than he did. He's going to start there and try to build his team from have-nots. And I think, his personality and who he is, and I think that speaks to a lot of those type of players anyway, and it makes them feel important and wanted. And having even, people on his coaching staff, he has, I think he just brought on Marshall Falk as the running backs coach there. So like having somebody like that, he has Warren Sapp there,
Warren Sapp, yeah.
two Hall of Fame players, some of the greatest players to ever play the game. That is so appealing to a kid who's 18 years old, and they need a mentor type for the running backs and defensive line. Like those are two of the most important positions in all of football. And now, like moving in the direction the game is, having those kids come in and want to learn from those coaches too, or who his friends are, I think is absolutely huge. I think Eddie George will probably do something similar too, though he'll bring in some of his dudes.
He's charismatic, just like Deion too. He's got his own way about him, but that charisma I think goes a long ways. And he's already talked to Urban Meyer, who used Bowling Green as a stepping stone, obviously. And Eddie George, from a coaching perspective, is still a young guy. As coaches go. So I think that, I think that a guy like Deion gets a lot of bad publicity for the shine that he is. He's got a lot of he's neon Deion for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very front and center when it comes to the camera, and I think that he outshines his team because of his persona. But
But it's like I also think that pressure that he brings on to his team, I think when he does that sort of thing, he wants to try to put the load on himself because he's always been able to bear that, like he's always had this immense amount of pressure on him. So I think he puts that on his players, but at the end of the day, media is always coming after Deion. Like listen to our group chat.
But,
like
right.
Shaprime and Shabuti and like
But
the
bottom
shit
line,
talk. It's like
though, you've got to still be able to coach if you've turned programs around like this. It's not like he just shows up, and I think that's the rap he gets, is that he just shows up, he's Deion, players come, he rolls the balls out. It's all about the rappers coming to practice and all that. But everybody's how is it that they win?
mm-hmm.
How does he turn things around so fast?
They had one win.
Got to be able to coach.
Like you said, one win before they got there. I think another great point that you made was the amount of TV they're on. How many nationally televised TVs did they have? TV games did they have since Deion's been there compared to the past? No one was watching a Colorado game. You kidding me? No one gave a shit. So it's like now they're on TV and everyone's pissed. But it's like that's what Deion does. He's gonna bring everything to light. He's gonna be like you said, Neon Deion. And he's gonna be loud and boisterous in himself, and it bothers people, which I love. That's why I love Deion. It just bothers people that he is such himself, and he's so sure of himself as a person that it's like nothing anybody says is going to make him think differently about himself, and that's what bothers people. It's like,
Well, and
he's what you'd want your coach or your leader to be.
what's different about, so I'm a big Dan Campbell guy. So Dan Campbell gets to the Lions and he says, "We're going to get players here that we're going to bite your kneecaps off." Everybody loves it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's no different than standing up in front of your college team and saying, "Listen, um, I'm bringing my own baggage in here and it's going to be Louis." So if you don't want, if I don't think you're good enough to be here, you're going to have to leave.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same message, but one is received, everybody loves it. And the other one is, oh, look at it's cocky Deion doing his thing again.
Well, then Deion says one of the smartest things I've heard a college coach say in the last 5 to 10 years, at least an idea to make the game more fun, was like, instead of having these boring ass spring games where like these dudes are playing and practicing against each other the entire like spring, bring in another program, play them all week, like a training camp, like Browns Vikings. They had Browns Vikings in the training camp during the summer and summer camps. It's like, bring those type of programs in, televise it, make it a big deal, make it fun. No other coaches are having those type of ideas either, and that's the type of thing that will push the game forward. Are people like Deion, where they're thinking outside the box and trying to make it not only entertaining for the people, but like it's also getting coverage on his team.
It's a great idea. I mean, you wouldn't want to play like a rival, but imagine like Ohio State playing Pitt, or a game like that in the second week of April, instead of playing an inter squad game where 7 players can be touched below the waist, 2 players can't be touched above the helmet. It's ridiculous, the spring game, but actually, and everybody's like, well, injuries. The NFL does it, and they're worried about injuries. Yeah, your starting quarterback maybe only plays a series, but everybody else is playing in real game situation. And it's a chance for guys to make the team.
Right, and it's also a chance for dudes who they might figure out, I'm 4th, 5th on the depth chart. It gives them another opportunity, maybe if they can transfer out after the spring's over, because a lot of kids do that. What if they get a little limelight in that? They have a special game in the spring, and maybe that bumps them up on the depth charts, and then they become a fan favorite. Like Terry McLaurin is not going to exist at schools anymore. They're going to transfer. Terry McLaurin was at Ohio State for 5 years, got hurt like 3 years. Noah Brown's another kind of example of that. Really good player, never going to be top 3 on the depth charts at wide receiver, but he was a dog, stuck it out, good player in the NFL. But like, those type of dudes are going to transfer out, just like Jameson Williams transferred from Ohio State.
I've always wondered, like college football, one of the things I've always wondered about is I get there's scrimmages, but we've all played sports. We know how inter squad scrimmages go. I've always wondered, like, how do they get a good read on who's a baller? I mean,
Right.
who can lay the wood and who doesn't want to get hit, type of thing, because they don't ever really hit. Like, at least in the NFL, you got to, you're playing the preseason game, you got a 4th string guy that's, trying to make the squad, and he's out there just laying people out. And you realize, hey, there's a football player here.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how I've never really understood how colleges get that read on players.
I'm assuming in the springtime, they have certain shit. They're running drills and they're doing certain things to put the depth chart together. I know. I've watched, because I'm coaching middle school football. I've been watching a lot of like drills and things that help you evaluate what a player is good at, whether that's his feet, his aggressiveness, his eyes, whatever the case may be. And I think a lot of these, it's almost like an Oklahoma type drill where they're going 3-on-3, or they're going and trying to see who can be more physical and like at the point of attack. But other than that, I don't know. I don't know. To answer your real question, I'm not sure.
Give me one game where you can stamp somebody out when they come across the middle in the spring. Like,
right.
And I
genuinely, and I think that would be great for the sport. It just makes it more entertaining, especially it brings more buzz, especially to a program who shows up and they're like, oh my God, they might be absolutely nasty this year. It would be a fun new concept. But moving on, let's get into, and I know we touched on it a little bit last week on episode 1, but I wanted to kind of bring some stats and a little bit more light to like the season that the Cleveland Cavaliers are having. And I know your Pistons just snapped a 15-game winning streak that we've had, which was kind of upsetting. But they've been playing really good, obviously, all year. And I just did a comparison of teams that are kind of similar in numbers between the Cleveland Cavaliers and champions of years past or whatever the case may be. So they're 59-15 right now. They're on pace towards 69 to that 72 wins. Their point differential on the year is 11, so that means they're obviously winning games by 11 points and more, and that's the highest in league history through this point. They're scoring 123.6 points per 100 possessions, which is the second highest in NBA history. They're 112 points per 100 possessions, eighth in the league in defensively. So obviously that shows you kind of where the point differential comes in, and they're shooting an NBA best 40.5% from three, with actually like a pretty high percentage of makes. For comparison here, the 2015-2016 Warriors team that won 73 games. They went 73-9. They didn't end up winning. Obviously, that was the LeBron year. But their point differential was 10.8. The Cavs was 11. Their offensive rating was 112.6. The Cavs this year is 123.6, which is significantly higher. Golden State has a better defensive rating that year, but offensively, you can see that the Cavs, not a lot of teams are keeping up with them. So even the 95-96 Bulls, they had a little bit better of a point differential at 12.3. But honestly, their defense is what carried the Bulls. That's the one thing I think this year the Cavs might lack in the postseason is they have a really high pace on offense, which in turn sometimes limits you on defense. You're more tired because you're obviously getting more possessions, you're getting shots up, you're playing quicker. That's something the Cavs are like 8th this year in pace. Last year they were 23. I think that's a big reason why for the success along with their role players. Another good example here too, the Boston Celtics in 2007-2008, they won 66 games. They went 66-16. Boston's offensive rating was 110.2. Again, the Cavs is 123.6. Cleveland plays at obviously a faster pace than them. They're about at a 45.5% from three, and that team was 38.1. So, again, a lot of these teams match up kind of well. These are the closest teams that I could find too that matched what Cleveland has done this season. You even have some of these like 71-72 Lakers teams are popping up when you look at historical context. One of the cool ones here, it says in conclusion, because I used Gronk and I just asked him like, so what does this mean for the success of their team? And Gronk said the Cavaliers are performing at a championship caliber level with a record and point differential that rival the best teams in the history of the NBA. Their offense is historically elite, driven by three-point shooting and outpacing most past champions. However, their defense is strong, but it does not match those of the years past champions. And he says their title chances maybe hinge on their defense, which I totally agree. It's going to be hard to stop those Boston teams and those elite level players with who we have. But I think it's going to be it's either going to be one of two things. It's going to be a coming out party for the Cavs and the players like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. Like a couple of these guys are going to show out. And I think this year, if they win it, I think the team that they closely resemble was probably those Tim Duncan Heat years where, they won with ball movement, they won with pace, and they won as playing as the team. I haven't seen a team this year that plays as good as the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Well, I mean, I'm glad for you Cleveland fans because I mean it's pretty much what you got. The Browns suck, so you have nothing to root for during the winter season. So now you've got the Cavs, which is great. I look at it like this. I mean, I think Evan Mobley has been one of the real stories of the NBA season. I mean, this guy has emerged into, I think, a superstar player, and he plays on both ends of the court, which is interesting. Someone once told me, though, I can remember a long time ago, I was talking to a guy when I was working at the newspaper, and we were talking about champions in the NBA, and he told me, if you want to look at the champions, the championship basketball in the NBA is a 3-on-3 game. And I said, 3-on-3. He said, yeah, take the top 3 players off each team and see how they match up with each other. He goes, because everybody else is just a role player. Mm-hmm. And role players are a dime a dozen in the NBA playoffs. He said, they all play a role. He goes, but he said, if you look historically at the champions, he said, most of the time, the champion has the best threesome on the, in the playoffs. So I look at the Cavs threesome and not being a diehard, but I would probably say it's Mitchell, Mobley, and Garland. Mm-hmm. And then I think, can Mitchell, Mobley, and Garland take out Tatum, Brown, and Porzingis? That's the question.
Well, then they have Derek White and
Right?
Peyton Pritchard. They got dudes.
They got dudes up and down the lineup, but if you think about the threesome approach, right? I still think the Celtics have the best threesome.
Mm-hmm.
And like every year, you don't really know what Porzingis brings until the playoffs because they load manage him so much.
Right, and he's kind of that X factor for them, I would say.
And I think that on the other side, OKC, they got the best player, I think, in the NBA right now in SGA. So, but I don't know if they've really got. If you think about their threesome, I wouldn't put their threesome up against the Cavs. So to me, and then I still think the big ticket item is going to be in Los Angeles in the Pacific side. I mean, because we talk about three, you can't have a bigger three than LeBron and Doncic. So, but when I think about can the Cavs get there, it comes down to in my opinion, will the Cavs three be able to beat that Brown, Tatum, and Porzingis threesome?
Right. And honestly, the thing that makes this season so historical too for not only Cavs fans but just like NBA fans in general, they started the season 15-0. There's only been 4 teams who have ever started out 15-0 or better. So like this is a historical team, no matter which way you slice it. And
which is good. Drake, let's be honest, that's huge because without that, the O'Connor boys would have been on if all they had was the Cleveland Browns to watch.
And honestly, it's like they've anytime I was down even during the season, like, oh, the Cavs are on, I'll watch half of the Cavs and and I'm like, okay, cool, I kind of like sports still. I thought I hated sports for a second there. I almost worry myself when I watch the Browns. I'm like, do I even like NFL football? And then I put on a different game, Chargers Chiefs at 4:30, and I'm like, this is what football looks like. Holy shit, I didn't know this is what the game was supposed to appear like. So yeah, it's been an awesome season, and this is the first time they've clinched the basically their division title. It's the Central Division. The first time without LeBron since 1976. So
that's amazing.
It's a big time year for us. No matter what, we feel at least, we've done something special this year. And I think moving on from LeBron and getting out of just always, our success has always been dictated by him for the last 20 years. Being able to hopefully take that next step this year and get those big wins against high-profile teams, or even beating those Indiana teams that are super hot and play well too, or something, getting over Boston or Milwaukee, or playing somebody at a high level and winning that. I think just gaining that confidence. And then we have players also too on the bench, like you said, role players. I think Ty Jerome has been somebody this year who's been, and getting DeAndre Hunter from Atlanta and trading George Niang. I think that's been big time for them too, to get rid of Karis LeVert. That's been something that they've had a lot of inconsistency with him over the last few years, and hopefully DeAndre Hunter can come in and be that spark they've needed him to be. And that's what we're going to basically see this playoffs. I still think it's Jokic's title until proven otherwise. He's the best player I've ever watched, hands down, bar none. Does things every game that you're like, I don't even know how he was able to do that. Because he looks clumsy. He looks like he's terrible at basketball if you see clips or whatever. But then you watch him play the game and you see how dominant of a passer he is, how dominant he is down low, and he shoots like 41% from three. It's like it's almost a way if Shaq could shoot threes and handle the ball.
The thing with him is that he's number 1 and 2 on your threesome because he plays down low, he plays outside, he handles the ball. Now this is a bonus trivia question for you, which is almost unfair, but can you name one player from the 76 Cavs?
The 76 Cavs? Maybe Austin Carr.
Austin Carr. There you go. Jim Jones.
I was like, the only one I can think of is AC, dude.
I think Lynn Elmore, isn't he the broadcaster for them? I think he might have been on that team.
Well, I know. The only reason why I know is Austin Carr is because Austin Carr, I think, was a first-round pick for the Cavs, and then he always talks about, like, he's Mr. Cavalier or whatever, so I'm assuming that was him. But that's the only one I know from the 70s. And then...
Hey, well done, rookie.
Well, it was a good guess. Honestly, I kind of pulled that one out my ass. But at least the Detroit like Pistons are having actually a really good year too, and they could be a scary team here in a few years. I know this year they're pretty good, but I think next year they need like that one more guy. You guys have some really good players, but like you said, think about their top three players. I don't think they're on the same caliber as
Yeah, I
some of these
mean,
other teams.
well, they're not even on the same. Like if you look at the top three for like the Cavs,
Yeah.
you've got a 1A in Mitchell,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got Mobley and Garland who are pushing for that.
Yeah, and then honestly, Jared Allen is also really good at center, and he's he's a good rim protector. Always has been. He's a really solid player. So it's like, and then Isaac Okoro is kind of our weakest link, I'd say. He's like
And
kind of the guy.
for the Pistons, though, you got Cunningham, who is head and shoulders the number one guy. I think crazy thing about what the Pistons have done is they've done it without Ivy, who's been out most of the year with
Mm-hmm.
an injury. But you got Cunningham, and then Duran's become a great player. I
Yep.
mean, he's going to be a big time force in the NBA.
Well, and the thing is, he was a big time draft pick too. Like a lot of people I think were kind of worried about him, but he's kind of come on. Like the Detroit roster, if you think about it, is a lot like that Houston roster. The roster or the Rockets. They're young, they're fast, they're like that new age player. Both of them have a Thompson twin too, don't they?
They do, yeah.
That's like
and not the singers. An actual Thompson basketball twin. But like the problem for the Pistons right now is that third leg of the three-legged stool.
Mm-hmm.
Who you go? I mean, you got Tobias Harris, who's kind of
They
he's
probably
been
the most
around.
overrated player. I mean, Dennis
Yeah,
Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder's a pretty good player.
Schroeder. Beasley's played
Honestly,
really
a
well.
really good pickup from
Yeah.
for I think didn't he used to play for the
Yeah,
Grizzlies?
and JB Bickerstaff has done a great job coaching that team.
Mm-hmm.
He's got championship pedigree. So I
Dude,
mean,
and also to be honest, they have a couple good players like Isaiah Stewart and like Paul
yeah,
Reed and just a couple of like good dudes on that team that I'm like, this team could be scary. And like you said, Jaden Ivey hasn't even come on yet. Like
yeah,
he
missed
hasn't
most
really
of the
done
year.
what he needed to. Yeah, he hasn't really become what he needs to become. But like that's my NBA talk. I think a lot of people don't give enough the NBA enough credit because like there are so many good NBA players and like these kids that have developed in these AAU leagues and have been playing against each other for 15 years, and now they're all coming together either playing with or against each other. And it's like I don't think the NBA has had more talent in the league than it has right now. And the passing of the guard is not going to be those superstars. It's going to be those teams that play together. You're obviously going to have your Wembys and your Jokic's and those people who are going to carry a team no matter what. But I think it really is going to change, and those role players are going to have to play their roles. And I think players nowadays are understanding that more so than they used to. The usage of the G League, the players coming into the league a little more developed from college now that the NIL's there, and they're trusting dudes like that. What was the dude from Georgetown? The Drew Hickey, or what was his name? He just dropped 20 points. The dude from Gonzaga who played for like 30 years, I can't think of his name, but like players like that coming out of college, playing 4 years, playing a year in the G League, and then coming in and being a decent role player like George Niang. He was another player that was kind of like that. I think people who haven't been watching the game, I think the playoffs will change their perspective on what state the league is in, because the All-Star weekend and stuff was terrible for the league. I think the game will be really shown off this playoffs and how good of a series every single series will have to be. It's going to be a grind again. That's why LeBron and those good players are always staying in it, because they understand what it takes to win those 7-game series. But yeah, I'm a big fan of NBA. I hope at least cast out of the crew people give it a chance a little bit more this like postseason.
You know what we need though? We need some good nicknames, man. Like back in the day, the NBA had Showtime and the Bad Boys, and you had the Boston Stranglers, and there was nicknames, and
Right.
there ain't no good nicknames in the
I
NBA.
hear like there's the mailman, there's fucking
Yeah.
there's Big
Oh,
Diesel. There's just
yeah.
like there's name, like I get what you're saying there.
Chocolate Thunder,
Right. I mean, the last one that I even think of really is like
the
you got
Admiral.
LeBron, you have the King James, and you have like Dwight Howard when he was fucking Superman. Like
Yeah.
you don't really see much of the ones anymore. I think a little bit of that probably has to do with John Morant flashing guns on Instagram and like
I think, but a lot of it
what
is.
game can you come up? What name can you come up with that? Or like the
I think
white
a lot of it is the down downplaying and the loss of sports writers in
Yeah,
the
I totally agree. I was going to make the same point.
because every one of those names was given by a sports writer, just about.
Or it was
You
like
know,
a headline, and then
yeah,
that headline transformed into like a nickname. And like you're
right,
not getting that anymore because, like you said, you're not having, those newspaper articles anymore. You're having more of a blog style, like
right.
clickbait article, or like a quick clip during the game where it showcases it during the game. Then people aren't going to read your article about it because they just watched it live. Like that's why top 10 Sports Center shit doesn't exist anymore, because you see the best play right after it happens on Twitter.
Right.
It's like it
And
doesn't matter.
so like back then, in that era, when you thought about Showtime playing the Bad Boys, you instantly in your mind had an idea of what they were talking about. One team was glitz and glamour, up and down the court, fancy passes. The other team was laying you out under the rim.
Right, right, and
You know?
I think that adds, like you said though, that the sports writers today are more concerned with fighting with LeBron and like being the story rather than creating the story about the players. It's like I think it's funny that we had our conversation last week and then or 2 weeks ago, and then the Stephen A. Smith LeBron stuff happens, and we're like, yeah, this is the whole reason why we want to have this podcast, because it's like I cannot stand listening to this shit anymore, and at least if I feel like I have a voice, I don't have to listen to those things anymore. And I'm just going to put out to the universe what I think because I know it's better than whatever the fuck I'm watching every day.
But if somebody out there wants to pay us Stephen A. Smith kind of
Oh
money,
yeah, I'll
we're
say
open to
whatever.
it.
Yeah, I'll say whatever you want me to say. I'll be a
Yeah,
fucking absolute ignorant dummy.
we're open to it.
I will sell my soul so I don't have to go to work every day. You're retired. You already fucking did what you needed to do. That's horseshit. I think let's wrap it up here. We've been going here for about an hour, and I think our last segment, if you don't mind, and I think this is for our boys in KSK and anybody else who has had this sort of debate. We're going top snacks on a road trip. So I do a lot of traveling. I have a 1981 Westfalia Volkswagen, so it's basically an old VW Bug that has a pop up and a bed and everything else. And I travel at about 3 to 5 months out of the year. This year's been down a little bit because I'm doing more of a summer travel and I'm coaching. But snacks are huge on the road. We're getting all the way from Ohio out to Idaho or New Mexico or Arizona. The snacks and those stops are what keep you going. If you are on the road, what's your kind of like go-to snack? Let's go. Um, like a food at like a you getting fucking roll. Are you getting rollers? Are you like what are you doing for like a meal if you're not stopping at a fast food place there? What are you doing for like a snack and like a drink? Like what's your go-to shit?
Well, I mean, I
Are you a guy that also goes to like Dollar General before, so you don't have to buy snacks at this
no,
gas
no.
station? Okay, I was gonna say I thought you were higher brow than that.
Although my wife does do a mean trail mix for the road, you got the peanuts and you got the M&Ms in there, that you
Yeah,
just can't.
overload the M&Ms though. I always
Yeah,
request for more M&Ms than raisins.
overload the M&Ms and raisins, but um, I don't know. There's a lot of things that come into play. This isn't just a simple question
I
because a
know
lot of
it's
things
layered.
play.
It's layered.
Like
It's hard.
for instance, I mean, at my core, I'm a Cheeto guy, but I don't want those in the car because then you got the Cheeto dust on the
Mm-hmm.
steering wheel. Big issue.
Right.
Um,
Oh, that's also a great point. You could probably have different things if you're driving or if you're riding in the
absolutely,
passenger seat. That's a good point. We should touch on both
absolutely.
of those.
Like for instance, if I'm rolling out in the morning and I'm stopping at a Mickey D's, if I'm passenger, I might go with the steak bagel, a little bit sloppier, but much better. But if I'm driving, it's the egg McMuffin because you can handle it.
Right, it's not going to fall out on you. You're not
Right.
going to have an absolute mess by the time you're getting to the baseball field or to wherever
Another
you're going.
example, and I mean, we're given like this is high quality shit we're given here, so this isn't stuff that's
Yeah,
just
tune in. This might have to go on a Patreon. We might not have to.
yeah.
We might have to give this away for paid customers only.
But like midday, yeah. I mean, I would. Who wouldn't want to go with like a windy single loaded up, or a double with stuff just dripping? But the play there, if you haven't gone this route, is like a chicken wrap.
Are you saying
You
like
know,
at the gas station or at a like?
I'm like in the drive-through. If I'm getting it and still driving, the still driving it plays a big role in all this.
Mm-hmm.
My passenger menu is much messier than my driver menu.
So you
But
might be able to pull the Cheetos off in the passenger seat, but no way in hell
at,
you can work
I'm
those in on the driver's
I'm
side.
I'm nail I'm nailing Cheetos in the passenger seat. Which, by the way, one of the sleeper Cheetos of all time is Clancy's Cheetos from Aldi's.
Mm-hmm.
Sleeper, it top notch Cheeto, better than the actual Cheeto.
Really?
Don't sleep on them. About half the price, 10
Wow.
times the taste.
Wow.
This is top notch shit.
This is good stuff. So this is kind of where I was headed with it too, because like I love a good fast food restaurant. Who doesn't? I like to indulge. So if I'm going on the road, it's all going to depend on how fast I want to get somewhere. Do I want to go to the gas station and do another stop to go to the restaurant, or am I just going straight, Casey's drive-through or Love's or whatever? I am an absolute sucker. If I see a Casey's and I'm driving, I'm stopping in a heartbeat. I'm snagging 2 slices of pizza. Those are just either because like my buddy is a dog roller. He likes the rollers on the
Casey's
fucking
pizza's good.
Casey's pizza, dude. Casey's pizza at 10:30 at night. You're tired as fuck. You've been driving for 5 hours already. You got 150 more miles to go. That Casey's pizza will bring you back to life, and you could drive for 4 more hours. Granted, I'm getting a strawberry tangerine Red Bull, probably 2 of them because they're buy one get one. And the Casey's pizza with maybe a Snickers, or I also have to get something salty, like a Cheez-It or like a
never had
a
a Red
chip.
Bull in my life.
You're not missing much. I think it's more placebo than anything. But like when I'm drinking Red Bull, I'm telling my body, this is gonna fucking suck for you. Here's a kind of a reward. Like
Okay.
it's like my body goes into, okay, we're traveling mode. The only time I drink them is when I'm in the car. I don't drink them. I don't even drink coffee every day. I have electrolytes sometimes, or like amino acids, but like I don't really do caffeine like that unless I'm driving, and that's when I think I'm the most wired. But then you stop, and I have my engine in the back, and my bed's on top of my engine, so it's 450 degrees because it's air cooled, so the engine's hot as fuck. I gotta wait an hour to go to sleep. And so so wherever I'm going, if I'm driving for 8 hours, I have to stand outside my car for literally like a half hour before I even put my bed back because my bed is so hot from my engine driving. And again, it's a 1981. It's air cooled. It's the first year they ever made them fuel injected. I have had great luck with it so far. I picked it up in Bend, Oregon. So like the traveling in this thing is not ideal. The seats hurt your ass. It's made in the 80s. It's not an ideal car. So those snacks, super important. The late night snacks though I think are key. The midday snacks, I'm going with more of a pretzel or like a chip, and maybe like I'll do a dog, or I'll do like maybe a chicken sandwich from like a Travelers, one of those traveler like truck stop things. We do that sometimes too. Those are fun. TAs.
Well, to me, like one of the most slept on snacks there is out there is the Funyun.
The Funyun is.
Wow.
Have you tried the flavor Funyuns yet?
No, I'm just
you're just a regular OG
Funyun guy.
Yeah, the thing is, the thing is, okay, you're going. I get a lot. I talk like my car obviously is loud. It gets a lot of attention. I stop at a gas station. People are like just gonna talk to me. Hey, I had one of those when I was a kid. My parents had one. Like I'm telling you, every stop pretty much. If I eat a bag of Funyuns and get out of the car though, and I'm talking to this person and I got Funyun breath, like I'm the dirty ass like homeless person that smells like Funyuns. So I got to be careful with what I'm indulging, especially if I'm sweating out garlic or something. You got to be careful in the car. You're showering about half as much as you normally do. Like we made a portable shower so we could shower on the road. Like we power a pump, like a water pump. We have like a jug, like a 10-gallon jug, water pump that we pump or with a like a drill battery. Like you put a drill battery into it, and that's how it turns on. And then I have like a portable hot water heater, and then we have like a tent shower. So like we'll put this tent up, we'll hang up our stuff like in a tree or whatever, and then we shower 2-3 times a week. And then whenever you're traveling, you're stopping at like a Planet Fitness or somewhere like that. Like I have the Planet Fitness membership. My buddy has LA Fitness. So if one of those are in town, we get our groceries, we get our showers, and we get out. So those snacks really do keep you on the road. So what's your drink then? Your drinking choices, since you don't drink Red Bull and shit.
Yeah, I'm probably just a straight Coke Zero guy.
So you can't do the liquid sugar regular Coke. You don't let it loose a little bit on the road.
No,
You're tight with it. Gotcha. Are you like a popcorn guy? If you're a popcorn guy, fuck you, low key.
No, I'm not.
Okay, good.
But I am I'm a chips are my weakness. I mean,
dude, me too. Eat the entire bag.
Doritos, Cheetos, it doesn't matter what it is, but that's my weakness, and that, especially over sweets. But if I need a little dessert action though, and we've had this discussion before. There is nothing better than an oatmeal cream pie.
Oh, I like a Debbie. You start giving me that. We might have to we're going to keep the little Debbie conversation for another time because I think ranking, that's going to get kind of intense.
Yeah, because
I
we might need to get Connor Burton and Cam Henry on for that discussion.
Oh my God, just at least
know
one
their way
segment.
around a little, Debbie.
Get him on the call in here and be like, Connor, we're live right now on the Rookie and the Vet. We need your take. And I think and the thing is, Cam Henry nicknamed him Fudgems when he was a kid, so his nicknames on this podcast will be Fudgems forever.
The kid has no problem ranking out some food either.
Good at it. He's skilled. He should have his own food podcast. I don't know what he's doing.
Should.
He's messing up. He could be the next Portnoy, but do it all with like donuts or something. But all right, do you have anything else here? Make sure if you anywhere that like the people can follow you at. Do you have any takes or anywhere? Or are we just going to make our social media and put that there?
I have a Instagram page and a Facebook page and Twitter, I think. I just don't know.
Yeah, let's have them follow your Twitter. Do you know what it is? Is it just Don Hensley something?
Well, I can look right here.
Yeah, go ahead and look. You can follow me at SRS Cards and Peak Polls. My brother-in-law and I, Blake, we started a new like brand thing too. That's why I have Peak Polls here. But just like a sports cards thing. So you can follow me at SRS Cards or Peak Polls.
Mine's at dhens55.
And our YouTube and everything is the Rookie and Vet Pod. That'll be on Instagram and on YouTube. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys next time. Have a good one.